Well, welcome back, folks. Before we move on to installing the taillight assembly and getting into other components on the YL1, I thought I would finish up the battery box area and the wiring inside of the frame. Yeah, specifically talking about the negative and positive battery leads. This is, I think I shared this with you before, this is the original earth or ground strap that I pulled off the bike. And it clearly had been damaged and pinched off or broke off. I suspect this is the original just because of the way the ends are made and the type of ring connectors it has at the end. And then this was the original, or the one I pulled out of it. I don't know if it was original or not because clearly it's been worked on over the years. This was the positive cable that I found in the bike. And as part of this video, I'll post a before and an after still photo of what the battery box looked like when I first opened it up and started to remove components, and when I have it done here before we move on to the taillight. Let's talk about the ground strap first, or the earth. This strap is at least 4 or 5 inches too short. I think it should be about that long or so. So clearly the piece in between is missing. I have a couple of options in terms of replacing this. This part is no longer available from Yamaha. So by definition I either got to replace it, make a replacement myself, such as using this kind of cord here, which is the same size. This was in my inventory. And this is the same size wire. So I can make a new cord or cable up using new connectors. These connectors are from my inventory, and I did manage to find a couple of ring connectors that are about the same size, at least in terms of the internal size of the ring. This would be the one that goes on the battery post. This little bit smaller one would be the one that goes underneath the ground screw, up underneath the ignition switch. And you can see that those ring connectors are about the same size. The outside is a little bit different diameter. This one isn't too far off. The larger one is a little bit smaller, but it would still work for my purposes, certainly. Or the other option would be to patch in a piece between here and here and just extend this out using the technique that I demonstrated when I worked through that series on the wiring loom or wiring harness. What I would end up doing in that case is taking a piece of this wire, which is again the same size, and splicing it in here and at the other end, something like that, to make a new cable. The advantage of using the original is it is original, and you know, or I know, that the ring connectors are the correct size, and it would be very close to original when I was done. It'd be tough to tell the difference. The disadvantage is it's a piece of used wire, and clearly I'd have to cut this back a bit on each side to get the fresh wire. I would remove this boot here. This is probably a type of heat shrink tubing they use to cover the ends, and to see what it looks like inside of there. The advantage to making my own is it's all new, and I would use all new cable. Well, this isn't actually new, but it's new in terms of I've had it around a while, but it's never been used on a project before, so it's unused from that perspective. And the advantage, of course, is this brand new cable. And once it's installed, especially up underneath across the top of the battery, you would never be able, I don't think, to tell the difference. What I think I'm going to do before I make a final decision, I'm going to remove these boots here, and I want to see what the connection inside of here looks like. And I'll take these ring connectors over to the wire wheel on my Black & Decker grinder and clean them up a little bit to see what they look like. So I want to take a little bit closer look at these parts before I decide to put the work into splicing in a section probably about that long right there. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove this harness. I'm going to 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove this boot or heat shrink. That's probably what it is. You want to make sure you keep your fingers out of the way, obviously, when you do this. I can't just get my knife up like that and just slit that. I think you can see there. It's actually in pretty good shape. A little tarnished. It's not really rusty, but it's a little tarnished. See about doing this to the second one. That heat shrink, not surprisingly, is kind of brittle. Let's go over to the wire wheel and I'll clean these up and I'll be back in just a minute. So I went off and cleaned these ring terminals, cleaned them up both sides. They cleaned up pretty good. I also stripped back the insulation just a little bit on each one of them so that I could get a look at the condition of the wire. It's about as I would have expected. A little bit of corrosion. They are 50 years old after all. But generally they're in pretty good shape. I believe that these two pieces could be easily used to make a new ground strap, earth strap, by splicing in a piece of this cable. I think it'd be easily done. But I think I'm going to take a different route, and that is just make an all new one using new spade terminals here, this wire, in my crimping kit that you've already seen. It'll be quicker, though that's not my primary driver here is time. I am retired after all, so it's not that time is of the essence for me. But I think I can create at least as good a quality, if not better, ground connector, ground strap by using all new components, and it will be virtually identical when I'm through to the original. So I think that's what we're going to go ahead and do. We're just going to set this aside for now. I'm going to go get my little kit and we're going to decide how long to make it and get to it. I believe the ground strap, the earthing strap, needs to be about that long or so, around 10 inches overall end to end. We'll verify that on the bike. I'm not going to guess. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect one of the ring terminals to one end, take it over to the bike with the battery in place, not strapped in, but in its relative position it will be, and then I'll get the final overall length that I think I'm going to need. And if you've been with me before when I worked on the wiring, this is going to be a duplicate for you, so I'm going to go through it quickly. Notice I nipped the end of that off just so I have fresh wire here. And now I'm just going to strip this back about that far. Twist the ends together so it's nice and clean and neat. I think I'll start with a larger of the two ring terminals. This is the one that will go to the battery. just going to bend these ears in just ever so slightly. So there's one end made. Again, this is the battery end. You'll notice when I use my little torch, this is a little inexpensive torch. I've got a couple of these. You can see the butane, I think, sloshing around in there. I paid literally, I think, $4 or $5 for this at a big box store. And it's even got a light in the end. How about that? It's really a throwaway. It's designed, I think, to be refillable somehow, but if not, I don't really care. It'll last me a long time. So there's the battery end. That's the end that will go here. This is the negative on the battery. It's a negative ground system. So that will go something like this and snake off the other end to attach to the frame of the bike. What I'm going to do now is I'm literally going to take and hook this up to the battery. Here's the little kit that comes with the battery and the screws, nuts and screws that are bolts that go in these terminals here. So I'm going to just attach that lead. This is just temporary. This is not going to be intended to be permanent at this point. I just want to make sure I get the lead to the right length. Okay, so now we're going to go over to the bike and I'm going to do a test fit to determine how long this cable needs. There's the battery and cable that we just installed. So I'm just going to slip this in here like this. And this other end of the cable will attach right here to this screw. And there's a couple ways you could route it. You could go up like that, you can go over the top, you can go underneath. It really doesn't make any difference. I'm going to guess the original went something probably like that. I'm going to make this one a little bit longer because I might tuck that up underneath. Nonetheless, you don't want to make it too short at this point. You want to make sure you got plenty of length. So I'm thinking something like that ought to be long enough. And then even if I don't put it up underneath the vent tube, that's what that is right there, the outlet for the vent tube, it still will work, something like that. So I'm going to cut the wire about right where my thumb is. Reinstall the battery just like we had it a minute ago. And again, I can do anything I want with this. I could do this. I could do this. but I'm satisfied with that. Again, it might be a little longer than necessary, but it gives me a little latitude here, a little wiggle room, pun intended, here when I install things. Now we've got to go ahead and make the cable for the positive, the hot side, which will come off of this connector and go to the wiring harness. In terms of the hot wire, the hot side, that's the side that will have a fuse. Again, this is the part I bought from Yamaha. This is new. This is the same part number as the original. At least that's what they show in their parts diagrams. I'm sure the original didn't look exactly like this. I think this is just a modern equivalent replacement that's functional. This is actually the wire that I pulled out of the setup. Clearly someone had been hacking away at it. This end may have been original at one time. Can't really tell anymore. Not sure. Someone might have taken the original wire and hacked it up and put on these crimp-on spade connectors, and they removed apparently the fuse in the process. So this is the fuse that Yamaha calls out in their parts diagrams. I'm not sure I'm going to use that though, because I'm very confident, pretty confident the original didn't look like that. I'm guessing the original probably looks something like this one. Now this is a brand new inline fuse. It doesn't have the ability to hold a spare like that one does. I found this, I was pawing around in my spare parts. This has never been used before, left over from some other project. I suspect probably from my Suzuki TS-185. Not really sure anymore. It doesn't make any difference, frankly. It's irrelevant. But it does have, it has the same type of fuse, same length fuse as the Yamaha recommended part. So the question in my mind is, do I use the Yamaha part like this? It would work, certainly. I would have to put a ring connector on one end. You know, one of these would have to go on one end. The other end plugs into the harness. Or do I use this, which I suspect is closer in appearance to the original, and simply put a ring connector on one end? I don't know if this is long enough to do that without adding on. In fact, I don't know if this one is either, for that matter, because they're both fairly short. What I'm inclined to do is go ahead and use this one just because I think it's more similar. It's probably closer to the original than what this one is, but I really don't know. If any of you out there watching this have an original YL1 with an original fuse block, and you'd like to share a photo with me of what that original fuse block looked like, I'd love it. It'd be real helpful to me eventually to make a long-term decision. I think short-term what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one. Either one of them has to be modified. It doesn't make any difference at this point which one I modify, because I can always go back and modify this one to fit. But I think I'm going to use this one right now, only because I suspect it's more original than what this one is, even though I think this is from a Suzuki Enduro. So let's go over the bike again, and I'm going to have to do a little fitting up here to see how long this needs to be, because I suspect, not sure yet, that I'm going to have to add a little bit on this. I don't think I can just put a connector on here, a ring connector like this, and just call it good. I think I'm going to have to add to it, but we'll see. So this is the place right here in the harness where this connector will ultimately need to plug, like that. And then that would get tucked away. Maybe I should just plug it in all the way, and it won't want to pop out on me. Like that. And then the other end will go up something like that. That's how it would fit. So the question is that long enough? Should it be a little bit longer? say down here like this to allow a little flexibility, like that or that. I'm not sure it really, to be honest with you, makes a whole lot of difference. We just want this wire to be safely tucked away. I think what I'm going to do is just, to avoid having to make an extra connection, I'm just going to attach the spade connector right here. I think that will be long enough, because it'll come out something like that. And I think that'll work. Let's go back to the bench. So I've selected one of the larger ring connectors. Again, remember this goes on the battery side. And what I'm going to do is cut a little piece of heat shrink tubing, because I'm going to do the same thing I did on the ground or the earth side, and use a piece of heat shrink tubing over that wire. And I'll need to strip this back just a little bit. So let's strip this first. And voila. Okay, let's, before we go ahead and do a test fit back in the bike, let's go ahead and connect this up here. And we don't have to mess around with that when we're over at the bike. Three, two, one. Now that we've got the positive cable made, let's go ahead and do a little test fit here first on the battery out of the bike, and then I think it'll be a little easier to test fit it here than at the bike. See how that nut pulls right in there? Now we'll go back over the bike and see how. Let's go ahead and see how things fit together now. Again, remember this ground will go up in here, something like that. And the positive will connect into the wire harness right here. Yeah, I think that's plenty good. I think I got plenty of cable there. I can easily tuck that away. This is not in the way of anything. I think that worked out just fine. So for outside of charging the battery with acid and connecting this ground wire here and the vent tube, there's only one other thing I want to do here, and that's make a pad to go underneath this battery. The original parts diagrams call out, I think they called it a tray. This bike did not have it when I started. And I have not been able to find one on eBay. I haven't even been able to find a used one on eBay. So I'm not really sure exactly what it looks like outside of the line drawing that is depicted in the parts diagrams, but clearly it's a tray or a pad that the battery sits on probably a bit of a cushion. If anyone, again, has a photo of one that they might have that's in reasonably good condition, just so I can see what it looks like, get a hold of me, because I would really appreciate getting a photo that I can look at. Now, if I had a 3D printer, which I don't have, I've been thinking about it, but I don't have a 3D printer, I could very likely make my own if I had some rough dimensions, or even could create my own dimensions from this. But I don't have a 3D printer, so what I'm going to do is make my own, at least a pad. I can't really make a tray. Now, in terms of a pad, you can actually buy battery pads that are made to absorb battery acids. You can buy them at auto parts stores. They usually come in a sheet. It's like 12 inches by 12 inches. You can cut it to size, and it's designed just as a pad that the battery sits on. I don't have one of those. I'm not going to go down and buy one just for this little battery. I don't store the batteries in my bikes long term anyway. So what I am going to do, though, let me remove this here. What I am going to do is make my own using a piece of this material here. And this is nothing but shelf liner. I use this to line the drawers of my tool chests and where I store tools. Now I have this left over. It's less than 1/8 of an inch thick, but I think it'll work perfect for this. So what I'm going to do is cut a piece of this out, and a little bit bigger than the footprint of the battery, and just slide this in here to allow for a bit of a cushion for the battery. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. By the way, this roll of shelf liner, you can get it adhesive and non-adhesive. I usually prefer the non-adhesive for tool chests and drawers. Has never been opened, so it's brand new. You can see it's a little dusty. Been sitting around for a while. So I don't need very much of it. Let's turn this over, like, back you up just a little bit. There you go. I don't need very much of it. Just a little bit bigger than a footprint of the battery. Now, this is not intended to be a battery absorbing material. Rather, it's intended to just provide a little cushion for the battery. That's all I'm looking for. Let me slide this over for you so you can get a little better look at what I'm doing. I'm just going to make this, cut this, just a touch bigger than the battery footprint, like that. And see if I can find a marker. I don't know if I got anything that'll mark on this or not, clearly. Red worked pretty good. I think you can see that red outline. Perhaps now you can see why I didn't charge the battery. I wanted it dry because of some of this jockeying around that I'm doing here. Take a scissors. And there we have our battery pad. So we're going to go ahead now and do the final trial fit up. This isn't the final fitting of the battery because I have to charge it with acid yet. So I'll end up removing the battery again to charge it when I'm ready for that step. But let's go ahead and fit things in place. I'll connect the positive into the wire harness and just tuck it away a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and attach the ground or earth wire. One of the things I did do, by the way, I did remove the anti-seize, or most of it, from this wire because I realized that this is going to be used as a ground, and I did not want the anti-seize to interfere with getting a good, clean connection. Go ahead and snug that up. So I've got the ground or earth strap connected. We've got the positive connected now. The only thing we have left to do is to install the battery strap. This is a new part you can see here from Yamaha. Still available. This fits up inside of here. There is a spot for the clamp inside of the frame. And there we go. The only thing left to do is put on the vent tube. I think the vent tube probably goes into this hole right here. There's a, I don't know if you can quite see it from your perspective, but there is a hole in the frame, and it probably comes down out here somewhere. I'll sort that out later. Now that we've got the battery dry fit, and I'm confident everything is in the right location. I've got a battery pad. I have to charge the battery yet. Fill it with acid, charge it, put it on the vent tube. Other than that, I think this part of the bike is ready to go. Now we're going to move on finally to installing the rear tail light. That's it for this video, folks. Drop me a note of questions or comments, and certainly if anyone has photos of either the battery tray, the original battery tray, or the original fuse block assembly, I would appreciate you letting me know. I'm curious what those parts look like. Otherwise, that's it for this video, and as usual, thanks for watching.